What happened when your mother-in-law stole your baby? My mother-in-law had my newborn baby taken away by claiming I was on substances, and then she and my husband raised my child as their own, while I was branded an unfit mother. I never thought my fairy tale marriage would turn into my worst nightmare. When I married David 3 years ago, his mother Margaret seemed like just your typical overbearing mother-in-law. She made little comments about how I folded his laundry wrong or cooked his favorite meals differently than she did. I brushed it off because David was worth it. Margaret was a former social worker, which should have been my first red flag. She knew exactly how the system worked and had connections everywhere. When I got pregnant last year, she became obsessed with being involved in everything. She insisted on coming to every doctor's appointment and started staying at our house constantly to help prepare for the baby. The woman literally took over decorating the nursery without asking me. She would make comments like, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" And some women just aren't cut out to be mothers. David always defended her, saying she was just excited to be a grandmother. Things got weird when I started finding Margaret going through my medicine cabinet. She would take pictures of my anxiety medication that I'd been prescribed for years. I caught her collecting my hair from my brush and even taking samples from the toilet after I used it. When I told David, he said pregnancy hormones were making me paranoid. Then I discovered Margaret had been meeting with her old CPS coworkers expressing concerns about my fitness as a mother. She had recorded me throwing up from morning sickness, claiming it was substance withdrawal symptoms. She was building a case against me and I couldn't prove it. The day I went into labor, Margaret insisted on being in the delivery room. While the nurses were busy helping me through contractions, I saw her near my IV bag, but I was in too much pain to process what was happening. After I gave birth, they ran a routine substance test that came back positive for substances I had never touched in my life. Margaret suddenly produced a bag of substance paraphernalia she claimed she found in my car. David stood there nodding along as she showed doctored photos of me supposedly using substances. The hospital called CPS immediately. They took my baby right out of my arms while I was still bleeding and exhausted. David looked me in the eye and told the social worker that I had been acting erratically for months and that he feared for our child's safety. I was ordered into a mandatory rehab program for substances I never used. While I was stuck in treatment, Margaret and David petitioned for emergency custody. Margaret presented the court with a fabricated timeline of my supposed substance use. David testified that I had threatened to hurt the baby, which was a complete lie. Her former CPS colleagues provided glowing character references for Margaret. The court awarded them temporary custody while I fought the system from inside rehab. When I completed the program 6 months later, I could only get supervised visitation once a month. Margaret had completely transformed my nursery into her baby's room. She and David presented themselves as co-parents with Margaret as the primary caregiver. My own parents believed Margaret's version of events and refused to help me fight for custody. The whole family praised Margaret for stepping up and saving an innocent baby from an unfit mother. 1 year later, Margaret successfully adopted my biological child. The local newspaper even featured her as the heroic grandmother who saved her grandchild from addiction. She started speaking at community events about recognizing signs of parental substance abuse. David got a new girlfriend who treats Margaret like the baby's real mother. Margaret legally changed my child's name, erasing the name I had chosen. I became a dangerous outsider, allowed only monthly supervised visits to my own flesh and blood. Finally, I found a lawyer who specialized in false CPS cases. She recognized the pattern immediately and connected me with other mothers who survived similar custody theft schemes. A private investigator tracked down David's ex-girlfriend from years earlier, who came forward with her own identical story about Margaret. The hospital lab technician who processed my substance test admitted under oath that Margaret had pressured her to falsify the results using her social work connections. Multiple witnesses came forward about Margaret's manipulation tactics. The case was reopened and the truth finally came out. Margaret had orchestrated the entire scheme from the beginning. I'm still fighting to get my child back, but at least now I have proof of what really happened.